Every day I hear you say you only want the best for me. I know the sighs and sacrifices, don't you think I see? Now today I want to say I only want the best for you. I see you trying, I hear you crying, I guess you need me too. There will be times when it's hard to love me, and I won't always make you proud of me, but when you need me, I will be there. I will mother you.
As I've grown, you've always shown a patience I don't understand. But when it's you who screws up too, who holds out that gentle hand, and as you know, the world won't go according to your every plan. But even then, I'll be your friend and hold your tired hand. There will be times when it's hard to love you, and you won't always make me proud of you. But when you need me, I will be there. I will mother you. There will be times when it's hard to love me, and I won't always make you proud of me. But when you need me, I will be there. I will be there. I will be there. I will mother you.
Oh, sorry.
Wow. Thank you. Not a dry eye in the place. Welcome to First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. I am Elizabeth Osta, she, her, and leading the worship with me today are Dr. Brock Cheswold, he, him, for our music. Providing such tech support is Michael Scott, and Karen Labraco, who is our online ministry, leading our online ministry team, she, her. It's my privilege today to also welcome, as I scroll to my place here, Reverend Eileen Casey-Campbell. Eileen is coming back to our pulpit. She's a UU minister at and a longtime resident of Rochester, New York, and a graduate of Colgate Rochester Crozier Divinity School. She currently serves as the settled minister for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. She has a wealth of skills that include youth and young adult programming. She has offered leadership and pastoral support to Muslim students while she was at Nazareth College. At one juncture in her career, Eileen consulted 47 churches on creating strategic plans for outreach to local communities and membership growth. We are bound to benefit from the results of her study. Eileen currently shares her life with her partner, Brian, their 2 children, their goofy dog, Pepper, and there's another, is there? Pineapple Pizza the second, another dog. She is a certified yoga teacher, someone clearly with a good sense of humor, is also particularly called to social justice and loves the spiritual practice of creative work with her own hands, making art, bread, gardens, knitted caps, and more. We welcome her here today. If you are here for the first time this morning, or the first few times, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it to this worshiping service. We have a visitors form that can be found in the chat for our folks online, and that can be found in your pews for people in person. Please fill out your form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this worshiping service. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor, let us take a moment to turn towards the camera and greet our online worshiping community. Please offer a wave. There's our camera up there. If you are online, please pop into the chat to offer a greeting, to share your joys and sorrows. If you're here at First Universalist, take a moment to turn to your neighbor. We did that. Okay. So our opening hymn this morning will be Gather the Spirit. And I think first we're going to have a call to worship, aren't we? First we have a call to worship. Yeah. Turn to each other. So as Reverend Lane Murray often says, it's hard to break you up, but let us join together and sing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. Obviously, there's a lot here to gather.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be with you all this morning. This is part of our UU Road Trip May, which no one is calling that, but I'm trying to get it to catch on, so if you'll help me out. Today, I'm here with you. Your minister, Reverend Lane May Reed, is over at First Unitarian, and their minister, Reverend Sherry, is in my congregation in Canandaigua. And then the last week of May, I'll be over at First Unitarian. Reverend Lane May Reed will be with my folks in Canandaigua, and you will have Reverend Sherry here with you. We're doing a little round-robin ministers road trip, which we're all going to call it. And I'm so happy about it. As you already may know, because Elizabeth really did her research, I used to work for the Episcopal Diocese of Rochester, consulting their 50-odd churches on community outreach and growth, among other things. And there's a sign you tend to see outside an Episcopal church, almost always. And it reads, "The Episcopal Church welcomes you." They put it on bumper stickers and t-shirts and keychains, it's everywhere. The Episcopal Church welcomes you. And often when asked about a church's mission or vision, about their unique reason for existing and serving their community, the church leaders would tell me, well, we're welcoming. We welcome everyone, that's our mission. And then inevitably I'd ruin their day by requesting that they explain to me to what they wanted to welcome people. We welcome you for what? Why? Because we all knew at that point, and at this point, that the everyone in we welcome everyone means even if you're gay, which in 2023 and back then in 2013 is not a mission statement. Like y'all know we're also welcome at brunch, right? We're welcome in the park on Sunday mornings, but it matters what they're serving at brunch. Welcome is the minimum. It matters what's on the menu. So I'd annoy my beloved Episcopalians by insisting that welcome itself is not a mission statement. And I don't tell this story in our UU churches to highlight how silly Episcopalians are and how much better we are. I tell it because I think it applies to us too. We welcome everyone, that's our thing. Yeah, so does brunch, so does the park, so does sleeping in. So do the Episcopalians over at Christ Church. They've got a freaking sign saying so. But I believe that even if we need some practice articulating it, we welcome people to something of substance here. We come to church because we are doing work in our community and our world that is at least as important as brunch on our best days. We're holding one another's joys and sorrows in ways that sleeping in usually just doesn't compare with. We're called to wrestle with not just whose needs and desires we're making space for, but also that this space is not an empty room. There is good news on the menu here, and it's delicious. It is good indeed. So if you're here with us this morning in person or joining on Zoom, you are indeed welcome. And that's only the beginning, friends. Welcome to church this morning.
Would Dave Van Arsdale come to light our chalice? Dave Van Arsdale, who mothered 2 children. And technology has gotten the best of me here. 1 minute here. As Dave lit our candle, and as if you light your chalice at home, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit. And may we reach out to serve our... Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. On this glorious spring day in Rochester, when we feel gratitude all around us for mothers and sisters and nieces and aunts, for all creatures who abound, let us take time to share our well-being with our congregation as we enhance our move to a virtual world, making friends with technology and each other. You may place your offering in the basket as it comes around to you, or use the QR code in your seats. For folks online, please click the link in the chat. Your generosity is so very much appreciated.
I dream of a church where everyone is welcome. I dream of a place we all can call home. I dream of a world where justice is flowing, with hope and peace growing, and good work is done. I dream of a church where everyone is welcome. I dream of a place we all can call home. I dream of a world where justice is flowing, with hope and peace growing, and good work is done. Make it so,
now it's time for a story. And as you maybe have guessed, because I was just here 6 weeks ago, I need a little help to tell the story. This morning's story is called Nasruddin Feeds His Coat. It's a tale about a very old trickster figure named Nasruddin, and maybe you know the story, maybe you've heard it before, but I need a Nasruddin. Anybody feel a little tricky this morning? Mom does. Come on up. And then I need some partiers. Any number of partiers, maybe 2, maybe 3. Come on up, partiers. Okay, the party's over here by the piano, of course. Here you are at the party. There's no speaking parts. I promise it'll be easy. And the story goes like this. It was Ramadan, which is a period of fasting for Muslims, which the characters in this story are. And Nasruddin was working in his fields. He was fasting from sunup to sundown, so nothing passed his lips, no food, no water. And he worked all day out in the fields during this fast, and he was just counting down the hours until he would go to the iftar. The wealthier folks in the community invited everyone to join them in their homes for a big iftar, a big fast-breaking meal, a feast they all had together. And Nasruddin noticed as he was finishing up his work that the sun was starting to sink close to the horizon, and he wanted to make it to the fast-breaking meal, to the iftar, before the sun went down so he could join in the prayers to break the fast and join with everyone together in their feasting. So instead of going home to clean up and change out of his working clothes, he went just as he was to the party. He came to the iftar, and everyone was feasting and partying, but no one said a word to Nasruddin. He looked around hoping someone would offer him a plate of food, would offer him some welcome or a hello, would give him the ceremonial date used for the breaking of the fast, but everyone sort of glanced his way and then resumed their conversations on their partying with one another. And so Nasruddin, saddened, went back home. He ate a small meal at his home and went to bed. The next day, Nasruddin got up, began his fast at sunrise, and he went to work in his fields again. He worked all day long. As the wealthier folks in town prepared for that evening's iftar, they made delicious foods, they set up their homes for a party. And Nasruddin, as he noticed the sun starting to set, thought to himself, today, I'll go home. I'll wash, I'll change, I'll put on my finest clothes. And so he did. He washed himself up. He put on his very best coat, which was a patchwork of silk and embroidery with golden thread running through it. It was a beautiful, magnificent coat, and Nasruddin was very proud of it. So he put it on, and then he made his way to the iftar across town. And as he came in, the folks who were hosting gave him a huge welcome. Come in, Nasruddin, they said. They gave him dates. They gave him plates of delicious meats and rice. They gave him baklava, and he ate his fill. And then, as they started handing him food, Nasruddin started smushing it into his coat, his beautiful silken coat with gold embroidery thread. Every time he was handed some delightful delicacy, he smushed it into the fabric of his coat. And finally, his neighbor said, Nasruddin, what are you doing? Why are you ruining your beautiful coat by smushing all of this food into it? And Nasruddin said, well, yesterday I came, just as I was from working in the fields, and nobody paid any attention to me. No one offered me all of these delicacies to eat. You all ignored me, and today I wore my very best coat, and you've given me baklava and dates and delicious meats and fragrant rice, and so I must assume that the welcome is really for my coat. And so I'm feeding my coat, since that's who you're welcoming, right? And the rich folks in town had an awful lot to think about that evening as they went to bed, and Nasruddin, with his well-fed coat, went home and slept well. And this is the end of our story. Thank you for helping me tell it.
Friends, as it is the second Sunday of the month, it is our monthly Food In Gathering, where we collect food and also finances to support the community cupboard on Nestor Street. So if you have not already brought your food forward to put into the baskets, you can do so now or when you come up on your way out. And thank you so much for your thought, and generosity to serve the community. Wonderful.
Friends, I invite you into this reverent time of sharing our joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from your heart-centered place. As we place stones in the bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All are invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat that we may invite and hear from the community gathered here. A joy from Susan Reedy. Her wife, Mary Kay Keenahan, had successful shoulder surgery on Wednesday. A sorrow from Dave Van Arsdale and me. His sister Sally has just had surgery for cancer of the neck and is now restricted to using a feeding tube. We just pray her days will be special. Thank you. We have online community joys, and I am not able to access them. I am sorry. I thought it would work. We all thought it would work, but it didn't. So for our online community, we put in a stone for those joys and sorrows. And we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love.
Will you join me in a time of prayer, followed by some shared silence? Remembering that by silence, of course, we mean the absence of grown-ups talking to one another so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life. Let's take a deep breath in. Invite you to be comfortable where you sit. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Perhaps your eyes fall closed. Spirit of life, help us to make room for all that is held in this room this morning, and in all the other rooms where we worship, love, and pray. May there be room for all of what this day holds for all of us. Let us make room for the joy, the fulfillment, the meaning some of us find in mothering. Room for the heartache held by those of us who, for whatever reason, cannot hold the children we love or wish to love today. For those of us who need the compassion and care of a mother and have not received it, we make room. There is room for all of it. Let us take a deep breath together again and be held by these words from the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's from, where he's headed. That way he'll have strength enough to answer. Or by then you'll be such friends you don't care. Let's go back to that. Rice, pine nuts. Here, take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor we put on to pretend we have a purpose in this world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting. We will snip fresh mint into your tea. For whatever arrives this morning, may we make room. A non-rhetorical question to start. You can shout out your answer. Do you want your church to grow? Yes. I thought maybe. Okay, a rhetorical, you don't have to shout out an answer. You can just think about it quietly. A rhetorical but entirely genuine question. Why? I did not grow up in particularly evangelical religious traditions. And I don't just mean capital E American evangelical Christianity. I mean traditions where insiders are meant to spread the good news to outsiders, where recruitment or growth was a goal. We didn't really think about being welcoming to new members, let alone going out to find them, inviting people in. New members in the traditions I was raised in were born in, not brought in. For Catholics, salvation is much more dependent on behavior than belief, so there's very little impetus to bring individuals into religious community. There's, of course, a whole other story when it comes to incorporating societal power structures into institutional Catholicism, but that's a different sermon. For Jewish communities, there's almost zero emphasis on growth or incorporation of new members. There's even a tradition of denying the request of potential converts multiple times to make sure they are really, really sure. In fact, there are few world religions devoted to the idea of growth and expansion of their membership in the way that Protestant Christian groups and their descendants tend to be. Even when we're bad at growth, because I don't know, our WASPy values say you should never share deeply about something that's meaningful to you, or maybe because we don't actually believe that our particular good news is essential to anybody's salvation, we care about growth on principle. Our churches might be shrinking year after year, but the goal is growth. I myself have stood in my pulpit and said to my congregation, healthy living things grow. If we are not growing, we're dying. But why? Why do we want to grow? The pragmatists among us will be saying, we need growth to survive. We need more members to balance our deficit budget. It's UU Roadshow month in May. I'm preaching this sermon in 3 congregations, and I know that the balance our budget bit is going to land in all 3 services, so you're not alone. But bad news on that front anyway. New membership growth is almost never resulting in new fiscal growth. Membership growth costs money. Longevity balances a budget. People who've been in the world long enough to build some personal financial stability and been in a church long enough to be really, really committed to it, especially in a faith like ours. Another non-rhetorical question you can answer with a show of hands. How many people here were born and raised Unitarian Universalist? I'm seeing 2 and maybe a few on Zoom. And how many people came to Unitarian Universalism later in life? Yeah. We're a tradition that is centuries old, where some 80% of our congregations are converts. We're actually pretty good at getting people in the door. We're not that great at keeping them. And I don't know, maybe it's partly because we treat them like their purpose in coming in the doors to help us pay our bills. Anyway, I'm still not sold on the why. Why do we want to get people in the door and have them stay? Some of my more sentimental friends out here are thinking, because we want this place to exist after we're gone. We have to grow at least the same rate we're dying if this community is going to last. To which, annoyingly, I admit, I say, why? Why do we want it to last? For what? I know that these questions are exasperating at best. You may be thinking another word. I just don't think that we should take for granted that growth is our goal without examining the why. And I'll tell you a secret that maybe you could already guess. I don't care if this church grows. I don't care if my church grows. I don't care if our movement is growing, not on my best days. I'm not too proud to admit that in my most desperate, ego-driven moments, I sit up in bed at night and I say, Brian, I really think I could grow my church. But at my best, at my spiritual core, even when I say healthy living things grow, I do not care if the church, the denomination, the movement grows. Growth is a side effect of health, not its purpose. What I care about, actually, in asking myself why, is that every person here can not just articulate, but embody the good news of Unitarian Universalism. And what, you may be asking, the hell is that? Because let's not kid ourselves, we bury it pretty deep sometimes, right? It can be far too easy to think of our faith like an empty room, in which case, welcome is the only thing we have to offer. Y'all come and just bring whatever you have with you. Every belief fits, everybody is welcome. This is not, even if we really fail to grow our membership, an empty room. There is good news at the heart of what we're doing, even if we struggle to name it. So let's struggle a little bit together this morning. Nerd alert. James Luther Adams was a Unitarian minister and theologian in the early to mid 20th century who wrestled with the question of the foundations of our faith. And his wrestling is maybe a good starting place for ours. Reverend Adams wrote about what he called the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion. Maybe you've heard of them. The only 2 of us grew up UU, but maybe we've heard of them somewhere along the way, right? This was a reaction to what were called the 5 rough stones of Christianity. That was a whole David and Goliath thing. That's a different sermon. Adam's smooth stones were these. First, religious liberalism, he wrote, depends on the principle that revelation is continuous. He meant that our religious tradition is a living tradition. We are always learning new truths. There is not in our faith the idea that our spiritual wisdom is limited to a certain source and that that source has been fully revealed and understood. We learned in Reverend Adams' lifetime what the original Hebrew of the Jewish Bible said and what the inside of an atom looks like. And he felt that those revelations should change us spiritually and that they would be ongoing always. Second, he said this, all relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not on coercion. It's foundational to our faith that we freely choose to enter into relationship with one another. This is the smooth stone I like to call not a cult. There's no punishment, community punishment, or divine for those who choose not to be part of this church. There's no shunning of people when they leave. Our congregations are not obligated to a higher authority than their own people. We join in association freely. We come together by way of covenants we freely make with one another, and we come back together in that way when we mess up or when we cause harm. So third, religious liberalism affirms the moral obligations to direct one's own effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. Ours is a faith that demands we work toward justice. We work at being together not just in fellowship, but in love and in justice. We make no room for beliefs that encourage us to ignore the marginalized or deepen disconnections between people. This is the stone I have nicknamed, "It's not a fucking country club." See also the reason no one is going to invite me to write an official theological history of Unitarian Universalism. I'm fine with that. Fourth, we deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. This smooth stone is just about agency. Good things don't just happen. He says we've got to make them happen. Our beliefs require us to be part of our own liberation. There may or may not be a God in our personal beliefs, but there is not one who works alone to move the world toward justice. Our collective work is required. And finally, Adams wrote, liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. We are a people of hope. This news is good news. There is no irrevocably fallen world. We may not see the restoration of every broken promise or reparation of every harm, but the belief that repair and healing are possible is foundational for us. And still, these smooth stones, it's too complicated, right? Like we haven't landed on it. If you're out there defying your WASPy heritage, not to make assumptions, sharing with a friend how this community has deeply transformed your life, has saved you, I just don't imagine it going like this. Friend, the good news of my faith is, well, nerd alert, James Luther Adams was a Unitarian theologian in the early 20th century. Like, that can't be it, right? But we're starting to see that this room is not an empty room. Like, there's at least 5 rocks in here. And it's not that I think we should be able to condense the nuance and depth of our faith into a cute bumper sticker. I'm not looking for the UU version of a John 3:16 t-shirt. I also don't think John 3:16 is a great summary of the beauty and joy in Christian theology, but that's a different sermon, probably for a different church. My point is that we have a rich and complex theological foundation. Just to be clear, I'm not interested in dumbing any of that down. I do think there is a center to it. And without a good understanding of what we hold at our center, we will continue to think of ourselves as an empty room into which a sad welcome is the only gift we can offer the world. We're more than that, friends. So springing forward about 100 years from the smooth stones, We're now in the process as a denomination of amending Article 2 of our bylaws. And for those of you who are thinking, oh my God, we just sat through a lecture on what's his name, how much more boring is this gonna get? I promise that is not as boring as it sounds. Article 2 of our UUA bylaws is what holds, among other things, the language of our principles. The UUA appointed a commission to study the entirety of Article 2, to ask, as we are this morning, to what are we welcoming people? And are we actually any good at it? And also why? And if necessary, to rewrite the whole thing, which they have done. Where they are leading us is to call ourselves a faith with love at its center. Let me read you just a tiny taste of what they've distilled. Love is the enduring force that holds us together. Love inspires and powers the passion with which we embody our values. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are justice, generosity, pluralism, transformation, equity, and interdependence. That feels, if I'm being honest, a little smoother than the Stones, right? Love at our center, to me, looks like belonging. In fact, I think our sometimes unfortunate habit of telling the good news of our faith by reminding everyone of what we are not a people of creeds, not a group that believes all the same things about God or humanity or healing or wholeness, not communities beholden to authority beyond our own. I think this is a way of making room for what we are. Because here's the thing I know for sure. None of us come to church because of who we're not. Those things we know not to be true won't carry us through any kind of storm. All of the nots, though, I think, are holding belief at bay to make room for belonging. I believe it's not an empty welcome, but a deep and meaningful, purpose-filled belonging that is the good news of our faith. We recite the knots, we reject all those restrictions on belief because for us, the much deeper ground of our understanding is belonging. So anything that cuts us off from belonging must be held at bay. We hold on to covenants, those promises we make in free consent to one another rather than creeds, a list of beliefs, because what we know for certain is that we belong to one another. The beauty of this good news is that the truly lasting bedrock of our faith doesn't live in books or sermons or some heavenly other realm. It lives in our bodies. It lives in the earth, in the actual stones, in the literal bedrock. I don't think we can separate our theology, however loftily we compose it, from the particular bit of earth that made us. And I have not learned in ministry, in books, in seminary, in 1,000 Sundays in a pew how to sum up the good news any better than this. I belong to the body of the earth, to that which made me. All of us do, which must mean, I hope, that we belong to one another. And that makes our question of to what do we welcome folks and why land quite differently, right? The good news of our belonging changes the shape of our welcome. It cannot simply mean that we include others in the circle of what we already do and how we do it, but that our welcome of others is a transformation of ourselves. Welcome isn't a value unto itself. It is a willingness for the sake of our inherent belonging to meet others where they are and be changed by them. One of the oldest Bible stories we tell is about this kind of welcome. Abraham, the story goes, lived long ago in a land called Canaan. He was a nomad traveling from place to place with his big household and his herd of animals. They had no permanent home, but they brought tents with them wherever they traveled. It was a dangerous and vulnerable life to be nomads. They were at high risk from thieves or criminals. They didn't have a long-term widespread community, so it was hard to know who to trust. Everyone was a stranger, so anyone might be dangerous. So one day, the story goes, Abraham was sitting outside of his tent, resting after a long day of work probably, when he saw some strangers approaching way out in the distance. He didn't run or hide or prepare to defend his household. He didn't even wait to welcome them in case they ever showed up at his door. He got up from his seat. He went out into the field to meet those strangers. He walked with them. He walked with them without asking who they were. And when they got back to his tent, he offered to wash the dirt off their feet and to feed them without asking who they were. "Stay with us for the night," he invited. And quite some time after taking in those strangers, Abraham realized that they were God in disguise. He chose the kind of welcome rooted in the good news of deep belonging, of an interdependence that is written into our being. He chose to widen his small, safe circle and to be changed by that choice. He chose not to wait for those strangers to come to him, but to go out to where they were and to walk with them. And when he did, he met divinity itself. It's not my goal for my church to grow, or this church, or our movement, any more than it was Abraham's goal to grow his household by bringing in some strangers. I don't care if we grow. I care whether you hold the good news of this faith so deeply in your bones that you could never forget it. You belong, and so does everyone else. We belong to one another, to this earth that made us, to the spirit of love that called us into being and lives at our center. Growth is a side effect of our willingness to be transformed. Just a side effect of a faith so good, so joyful, that we can't help but live it out loud. May it be so. May we always know that we belong. Amen.
Please join for hymn number 95. There's more love somewhere.
Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning. Let us read together the words printed on the screen. Maybe? We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. As we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand over your heart. If you're joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view and look on the faces of those here with you. For those of us in the room, take a moment to look around at those here with you today. I invite you to join us when the service is over in coffee hour, the details about which I know nothing, but I assume that you all do. And so I offer as a benediction the words of that great prophet of our time, Pat Benatar. Whatever we deny or embrace, for worse or for better, we belong. We belong, we belong, we belong together. And let the people of the church say amen. Amen.
Questioning the rules, then we're living lives we bought so long ago. How are they to know it's not who's wrong or right? It's just another way, and I don't want to fight, but no, I'm gonna stay with you. Till the end, with you, my friends, 'cause love don't need a reason. Love don't always run. If love is all we have for now, we've got to make the time. I'll hold you close, time can't tear us apart. Forever I will stand by you. Oh, we got to start with the beat of two hearts. Together we will see this through. we've got to make. We've got to make